Here's one I prepared earlier, is a phrase woven into my childhood. As a veteran of Blue Peter, I would watch the presenter make something out of an old cereal packet and some sticky back plastic. I'm not a crafty person. What I put together is talks with words. So here's one I prepared earlier in, of all places, Halford's car park. A couple of weeks ago, I had the dreaded warning light on the dashboard. Such is modern life that a light comes on to tell you that a light isn't working. So when I finally worked out how to ring Halfords, I gave them a call and they said, yeah, it's a walk-in service, just bring it down. So I thought, that's good. So down I went and duly walked in about 9 a.m, only to be informed that the fitter hadn't arrived but would be there by 10:15. It didn't make sense to go home, and although I was opposite the park, I wasn't really feeling it. So I went and sat in my car to plot my next move. I looked up and I saw the sign, "We Repair," and I sat there rather grumpily thinking, but not until 10:15. I then looked again at that sign and had, appropriately enough, a light bulb moment. My mind went to John chapter 1, which I looked up and read this. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify concerning that light, so that through him all might believe. He himself was not the light, he came only as a witness to the light. John's role was to prepare others for the coming of the light of the world, the Lord Jesus Christ. And that's my role now for just a few minutes. So how can we do that? I've got three very simple points today. Admit your sin, let him in, and follow him. So let's have a look at each of these in turn. Firstly, admit your sin. A headlamp not working meant we had a problem. Driving without a light isn't good for obvious reasons, and it's also illegal. There was no point in pretending the problem wasn't there. We had no light on the left of the car, and this needed dealing with. And in a similar way, when it comes to what's wrong in our hearts, that the Bible calls sin, the first step is to admit that it's there. As with any problem, if you don't do that, you'll never get it dealt with. If there's darkness in our hearts, then that needs sorting out. But how can that be done? Secondly, let him in. When it came to the car, it was one thing to say the light wasn't working. I needed to do something about it. I know some people can fit these things very easily, but I'm not one of them. So I needed to let someone else do the work that I couldn't. There would have been no point in the person saying he could sort it, and then me saying, you're not coming anywhere near my car. I needed to open the bonnet, let him get on with it. I then needed to make sure I didn't misinterpret everything he was doing to give me light. Comparing his work on my car with that for the other one in the fitting bay was not a good idea. Maybe the other person's headlamp didn't take as long because it wasn't so awkward to get to. And in the same way, we need to let the Lord do his work, to shine his light in our darkness and deal with the problem of sin in our lives. We're not to compare ourselves with the one next to us, because we're all made differently. So, to let the Lord's light shine in our hearts, we need to admit our sin, let him in, and thirdly and finally, follow him. Back in the days before sat-navs, if you didn't know where you were going and someone else did, you heard those fateful words, just follow me. And you just knew it was never going to be that simple. For you then get separated by a red light, a car overtaking you, and the person in front zooming off like Lewis Hamilton in his prime. Just follow me, they said. And although if you kept following, you would eventually make it to your destination, it would be difficult along the way. John was the witness that pointed to the light, the Lord Jesus Christ, who said, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." Following Jesus is never easy. We can get overtaken by events and lose sight of him if we're not careful. Not that that's ever his fault. But if we keep following him, we will eventually make it to our destination, a place where the lights of this world are not needed because it never gets dark. I would love every one of us listening to this to experience this for themselves. And we can, if we admit our sin, let him in, and follow him. It's not for me to predict what the Lord will say when his people arrive in heaven. Although "well done, good and faithful servant" are words we long to hear. But here's one I prepared earlier. Doesn't seem out of place for the entry of one of his servants into heaven. For our lives are a preparation by the light of the world for a place with him in a world beyond the feeble light we know down here. Let's walk in the light of the Lord and, like John, share him with those around us.